My name is Autumn Parker, and at 28, I thought I knew everything about my family. That changed the day my grandfather Raymond asked about an apartment I never knew existed. I was visiting him at Oakwood Hospice when his eyes suddenly cleared. He smiled, squeezed my hand, and asked, "How's that apartment on Maple Street treating you, sweetheart?" I froze, confused. I lived in a downtown loft, not on Maple Street. Grandpa had been diagnosed with dementia 2 years ago, but something about his question felt important. Before I continue this story that changed everything I thought I knew about my family, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you want more real-life mysteries like this one. The fluorescent lights of Oakwood Hospice cast an unnatural glow over everything. Every time I visited, the same antiseptic smell hit me, a mixture of cleaning products and medication that never quite masked the underlying scent of illness. Beeping machines created a constant background rhythm, a technical heartbeat monitoring the remaining time of the people here. My grandfather Raymond lay in bed looking smaller than I remembered. His once strong hands, which had taught me how to bait a fishing hook and build birdhouses, now rested limply on the white sheets. His skin had taken on a papery quality, thin and fragile like onion skin. The robust man who'd carried me on his shoulders at county fairs had diminished, his body sinking into itself. "He's having a good day," Nurse Heather had told me when I arrived. "He's been more responsive this morning." I sat beside him, holding his hand and telling him about my latest graphic design project. I wasn't sure how much he understood, but the doctors said familiar voices helped even when patients couldn't respond. That's why his sudden clarity had caught me off guard. "How's that apartment on Maple Street treating you, sweetheart?" He'd asked with perfect lucidity, his eyes focused on mine with recognition that had been absent for months. Grandpa Raymond had been the constant in my life. While my parents, my mom Melissa and dad James, built their careers in corporate law and finance respectively, I spent weekends and summers with my grandparents. Their Victorian house with the wraparound porch became more home to me than our own modern suburban house. Grandma Evelyn had passed away 5 years ago from a stroke. After that, Grandpa started declining, slowly at first, then faster after the dementia diagnosis. I'd watched him retreat into himself, losing pieces of the man I knew, until most days he didn't even recognize me. After his surprising question, I pressed gently, "Grandpa, I don't live on Maple Street. I'm in the downtown loft, remember? The one with the exposed brick you said reminded you of your first job at the factory?" His brow furrowed, confusion clouding his eyes again. "Must be thinking of someone else," he mumbled, then drifted back into that vacant stare. When Nurse Heather came in to check his vitals, I followed her into the hallway. "Is it normal for patients with dementia to have moments of clarity like that?" She nodded, adjusting her clipboard. "We call them lucid moments. They can happen randomly, especially in the later stages. Sometimes they remember things from long ago with perfect clarity but get confused about recent events." He asked about an apartment I never lived in, on a street I don't recognize. "That's common too. They might blend memories together or confuse people from different times in their lives." She gave me a sympathetic smile. "Try not to read too much into it. Though sometimes." She hesitated. "Sometimes what?" "Sometimes those moments of clarity reveal things they've kept hidden. Secrets they've carried. The mind lets go of inhibitions as the disease progresses." I turned this over in my mind as I waited for my mother to arrive for her visit. When she came, I mentioned Grandpa's question. "Mom, Grandpa asked me about an apartment on Maple Street today. Does that mean anything to you?" Her hand paused midway through fixing her lipstick. Just for a second, something flickered across her face, recognition, then discomfort. "Your grandfather is confused, Autumn. You know that." She snapped her compact mirror shut with more force than necessary. "He's mixing up his memories." But he seemed so clear when he asked. Like he really believed I should know about this place. "Dementia is unpredictable. Don't upset yourself trying to make sense of it." She straightened her designer blazer and checked her watch. "I have a client meeting in an hour. Will you be okay here alone?" My mother's abrupt dismissal only heightened my curiosity. In the 20 minutes she stayed, she kept the conversation firmly on work and my cousin's upcoming wedding. Not once did she approach the topic of Maple Street again. As she was leaving, I caught her arm. "Mom, did Grandpa ever live on Maple Street? Maybe before you were born, or when you were little?" She pulled away slightly, not meeting my eyes. "Not that I know of." "Look, honey, I really have to go. We can talk about this another time." But her hurried exit told me everything I needed to know. There was something about Maple Street my mother didn't want to discuss. And now I was determined to find out what. Back in my downtown loft, I couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa's question. The exposed brick walls that usually felt so comforting now seemed to close in around me as I paced across the hardwood floors. Why would he ask about an apartment I never lived in? And why did my mother react so strangely? I called my father, hoping for a more straightforward answer. "Dad, do you know anything about Grandpa Raymond and a place on Maple Street?" There was a pause on the line, too long to be natural. "Why do you ask?" I explained about Grandpa's lucid moment at the hospice. "Autumn, your grandfather is very sick. His mind is playing tricks on him. I wouldn't put much stock in anything he says these days." His voice had that forced casualness I recognized from childhood, the tone he used when avoiding difficult topics. But Mom had a weird reaction too when I asked her. "Well, it's hard for her seeing her father like this. Look, I've got to run to a meeting. Love you, kiddo." 2 deflections in one day. Now I knew for certain there was something worth investigating. I pulled out the old family photo albums I'd inherited from Grandma Evelyn. Page after page of faded photographs documented family picnics, holidays, and vacations spanning decades. I studied them carefully, looking for any clue about Maple Street. In the back of the third album, tucked between pages, I found a photograph I'd never noticed before. Grandpa Raymond standing in front of a brick building with green trim, looking much younger than I'd ever seen him. He was smiling, one hand raised in a wave. The photo was dated June 1974 on the back, but there was no address or indication of where it was taken. I turned to my laptop and searched for Maple Street in our hometown of Riverdale. It existed, about 15 blocks from my grandparents' Victorian house, in what was now a gentrified area with coffee shops and boutiques. I called my childhood friend Stephanie, who still lived in Riverdale. "Steph, do you know anything about the apartments on Maple Street? The old brick buildings?" "Yeah, they're still there. Most of them have been renovated now, but they've been around forever." "Why?" "Just curious. My grandfather mentioned them today. They used to have a reputation back in the day. My mom called it the wrong side of town when she was growing up in the 70s. Nothing scandalous by today's standards, just where the factory workers and single people lived instead of families." "Why is your grandfather talking about them?" "I'm not sure," I replied, not wanting to share my suspicions yet. "Thanks, Steph." After we hung up, I remembered the old address book of Grandpa's that I'd kept after Grandma died. I dug through my storage closet until I found the worn leather book. Flipping through the yellowed pages, I found nothing under M4 Maple. But then, between entries for Richards, Tom and Sanchez, Eddie, I noticed a cryptic entry, MS Apt 3B followed by a phone number with our hometown area code. MS. Could that stand for Maple Street? I decided I needed to see this place for myself. I marked the weekend on my calendar for a trip to Riverdale, just 2 hours away. That evening, my boyfriend Nathan came over with takeout Chinese food. As we ate, I filled him in on the mystery. "So you're really going to drive 2 hours because your grandfather, who has dementia, mentioned a street name?" He looked skeptical, chopsticks paused midair. "It's more than that. You should have seen how my mom and dad both reacted. They're hiding something. Or maybe they're just stressed about your grandfather's condition and don't want to upset you by explaining he's confused." I showed him the photograph and the address book entry. "Okay, that's a little more intriguing," he admitted. "But still, it could be nothing. Maybe he had a friend who lived there. Or a coworker. I need to know, Nathan. Something doesn't feel right. My family isn't usually secretive. He sighed, putting down his container of lo mein. Want me to come with you this weekend? I don't have any meetings, and it might be nice to get out of the city. I felt a surge of gratitude. Even if he didn't fully understand my curiosity, he was willing to support me. That would be great. We can make a mini road trip out of it. What I didn't tell Nathan was how much this mystery had already gotten under my skin. All my life, I'd believed I knew my family's history. Now I wondered what else might be hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly ordinary lives. The drive to Riverdale took us through rolling countryside that gradually gave way to familiar suburbs. As Nathan drove, I watched the landscape change, remembering countless trips along this same route during my childhood. It's strange coming back as a visitor, I said, as we passed the Welcome to Riverdale sign with its faded blue paint and the town motto, a good place to call home. When was the last time you were here? Nathan asked, slowing down as we entered the town limits. Christmas, to see my parents. But I haven't really explored the town in years. Main Street had changed, more chain stores had replaced the local businesses I remembered, though Pete's Diner still stood on the corner, its neon sign glowing even in daylight. We drove past my old high school, the community pool where I'd learned to swim, and finally turned onto Maple Street. The neighborhood had clearly been gentrified since my grandfather's day. Boutique shops occupied the ground floors of several buildings, with signs advertising artisanal coffee, vintage clothing, and local art. But the buildings themselves, three-story brick structures with large windows, looked largely unchanged from the photograph I'd found. That's it, I said suddenly, pointing to a building with green trim around the windows. That's the building from the photo. Nathan parked across the street, and we sat for a moment, studying it. A small sign next to the entrance read Maple Street Apartments EST 1925. What's the plan here? Nathan asked. Knock on doors until someone remembers your grandfather from 50 years ago? Let's see if there's a building manager or something first. In the entryway, a row of mailboxes lined one wall, and a door marked manager stood opposite. I knocked, and after a moment, an elderly man with thick glasses opened it. Can I help you folks? He looked us up and down suspiciously. Hi, I'm Autumn Parker. I was wondering if you could tell me anything about the history of this building. My grandfather might have lived here in the 1970s. His expression remained wary. I'm Walter. Been managing this place 43 years now. What's your grandfather's name? Raymond Parker. Walter's eyebrows shot up in recognition. He studied my face more carefully. Raymond Parker, huh? Tall fellow, worked at the paper mill, drove a blue Chevrolet? My heart skipped. Yes, that's him. Did he live here? Walter hesitated, glancing between Nathan and me. He had apartment 3B for about 8-9 years. From 71 to sometime around 79 or 80. I exchanged a look with Nathan. This didn't make sense. But my grandfather was married to my grandmother during those years. They lived in the Victorian house on Elm Street. Walter shifted uncomfortably. Look, it's not my business to dig up ancient history. Your grandfather paid his rent on time and never caused trouble. That's all I cared about. Please, I pressed. He's in hospice care now with advanced dementia. He mentioned this place to me, and I'm trying to understand why. Walter sighed deeply. There was a woman who lived there with him some of the time. Dark hair, pretty. Diana, I think her name was. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My grandfather had another woman? Another place he lived? Diana who? Do you remember her last name? Carter, I believe. Diana Carter. Walter looked increasingly uncomfortable. That's really all I know. It was a long time ago, and I make it a policy not to get involved in tenants' personal lives. Do you know where she is now? Or if there are any other residents who might remember them? Most folks from that time have moved on or passed away. Mrs. Greenberg in 2A might remember, she's been here since the 60s. But she doesn't talk to strangers much these days. He started to close his door. Look, I've said more than I should already. Some things are better left in the past. Back in the car, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what we'd learned. Autumn, Nathan began gently, maybe we should head back. This is clearly bringing up some difficult family history. No, I said firmly. I need to understand this. My whole life, I thought my grandparents had this perfect marriage. Everyone talked about how devoted they were to each other. Now I find out he had, what? A second home? An affair? People are complicated. Whatever happened was a long time ago. Don't you see? This changes everything I thought I knew about my family. If Grandpa was living this double life, who else knew? Did my mom know? Is that why she and my dad were so evasive? Nathan looked concerned. I just don't want you getting hurt digging into this. Some family secrets stay buried for a reason. His words only strengthened my resolve. The local library will have newspaper archives. Let's go there next. Despite Nathan's growing reservations, we headed downtown to the Riverdale Public Library, a sandstone building that had seemed enormous when I was a child but now looked quaint and small. Inside, not much had changed, the same wood-paneled walls, the same smell of books and furniture polish. Can I help you find something? Asked the librarian, a woman about my age with a name tag reading Donna. I'm looking for newspaper archives from the 1970s, specifically anything that might mention Raymond Parker or Diana Carter. Donna's eyes lit up at the prospect of research. Local history is my specialty. We've digitized most of our archives now. Come on back to the research room. As we followed her, I could sense Nathan's increasing discomfort with our investigation. But I couldn't stop now. Somewhere in this town lay answers to questions I hadn't even known to ask. The research room was small but well equipped, with 3 computer stations and a microfiche reader for the oldest archives. Donna set us up at a computer and showed us how to navigate the digital newspaper collection. Just type in the names or dates you're looking for. Let me know if you need anything else. I started with Raymond Parker and narrowed the date range to 1970 to 1980. Several results appeared, mostly related to his work at the paper mill, a few community events, nothing surprising. Then I tried Diana Carter for the same period. The third result made my breath catch. Birth announcement, June 15, 1974. Diana Carter and Raymond Parker are pleased to announce the birth of their daughter, Lily Marie, born June 10 at Riverdale Memorial Hospital. Mother and baby are doing well. The room seemed to spin around me. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. Autumn? Nathan's voice sounded far away. What is it? I pointed wordlessly at the screen. He leaned in to read it, then looked at me with shock that mirrored my own. I have an aunt, I whispered. A half-aunt I never knew existed. Nathan put his arm around my shoulders. Are you okay? I wasn't sure how to answer. This revelation went beyond anything I'd expected to find. My grandfather hadn't just had an affair, he'd had another family. Another daughter. Born while he was still married to my grandmother. I need to call my mom, I said, standing up so abruptly my chair scraped loudly against the floor. Several other library patrons looked up in annoyance. Outside on the library steps, I dialed my mother's number with shaking hands. She answered on the third ring. Autumn? Is everything okay? I'm in Riverdale, I said without preamble. At the library. I just found a birth announcement for Lily Marie Parker, daughter of Diana Carter and Grandpa Raymond. Born 1974. The silence on the other end stretched for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice strained. Where are you staying? We need to talk about this in person. I'm not staying anywhere yet. We just drove down for the day. We? Nathan's with me. She sighed heavily. Come to the house. I'll be there in 30 minutes. My childhood home looked exactly the same, a colonial-style house with black shutters and a neatly manicured lawn. My mother's Lexus was already in the driveway when we arrived. She opened the door before we could ring the bell, her face tight with worry. Come in. We followed her to the kitchen, where she methodically prepared a pot of coffee, her movements precise and controlled. How long have you known? I asked, unable to wait any longer. She set 3 mugs on the counter with a little too much force. Since I was 16. I found letters from Diana in your grandfather's desk. I confronted him, and he told me everything. And you never said anything? All these years? What was I supposed to say? By the way, your grandfather had a second family for nearly a decade? She poured the coffee with a steady hand that belied her obvious distress. Your grandmother knew. They had an understanding. An understanding? I repeated incredulously. Grandma knew he was living this double life and was okay with it? It wasn't okay with her, my mother said sharply. But this was the 1970s. Divorce was still stigmatized, especially in a small town like this. She made her choice to stay. For me, for stability, for a dozen reasons that made sense to her. And Diana? This other woman just accepted sharing him? My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Diana was complicated. She loved him, I think. But she was proud. Too proud to demand he leave his family. And she had her own career as a nurse. She wasn't dependent on him. And Lily? My aunt? The word felt strange on my tongue. Half-aunt, technically. Yes, Lily exists. I've never met her. After I found out, your grandfather kept his 2 lives completely separate. When Diana died about 10 years ago, he lost touch with Lily completely. Diana died? The news shouldn't have affected me, this woman was a stranger, but somehow it did. Cancer, I believe. Your grandfather was devastated, though he tried to hide it. My mother took a sip of her coffee, grimacing at the bitterness. When you were born, he swore he'd never let his past mistakes touch you. He wanted to be the perfect grandfather. But he lied to me my entire life. You all did. We protected you, she corrected. There was no reason for you to carry this burden. Nathan, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. Mrs. Parker, do you know if Lily is still in Riverdale? My mother glanced at him with something like gratitude for changing the subject slightly. Last I heard, she married someone named Wilson and moved to Greenfield. That's about 30 miles north of here. I want to find her, I said firmly. Autumn, please. Let sleeping dogs lie. What good would it do to disrupt her life now? Or yours? Grandpa asked me about the apartment. In his last lucid moment, that's what he wanted to talk about. Don't you think that means something? My mother looked away, blinking rapidly. Your grandfather carries a lot of regret. But opening this door, there's no closing it again. It's already open, Mom. I can't unknow what I've learned today. She nodded slowly. I suppose that's true. She looked up at me, her eyes tired. Just, be careful. Not everyone wants to confront the past. Nathan and I left shortly after, the weight of my mother's revelations hanging between us. In the car, he turned to me. Are you sure you want to keep going with this? Your mom might be right about letting it be. I'm sure, I said, though part of me was terrified of what I might discover next. But I'd understand if you want to head back to the city. This isn't what you signed up for. I'm worried about you, he admitted. This is a lot to process. I need to see this through, Nathan. I can do it alone if I have to. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I have meetings Monday I can't miss. Why don't I drive back tomorrow, and you can stay? Take the time you need. I squeezed his hand, grateful for his understanding even as I felt a growing distance between us. He couldn't possibly understand what this meant to me, how it felt to have the foundation of your family history crack beneath your feet. We found a modest hotel for the night, but sleep eluded me. Instead, I lay awake, thinking about the grandfather I thought I knew, and the man who had lived a second life just 15 blocks away. After Nathan left the next morning, I threw myself into the search for Lily. I started with social media, searching for Lily Wilson with connections to Riverdale or Greenfield. Dozens of profiles appeared, none looking promising. I tried variations: Lily Carter Wilson, Lily Marie Wilson, Lily Parker Wilson, with no better results. Next, I turned to online databases, searching public records for marriage licenses. For a fee, I found what I was looking for. Lily Marie Carter had married Thomas Wilson in 1996 in Riverdale County. But finding a current address proved more challenging. Every lead I followed ended in a dead end or outdated information. Frustrated, I decided to try the county records office directly. The Riverdale County Administration Building was a dreary concrete structure from the 1960s. Inside, I followed signs to the records department, where a bored-looking clerk directed me to a computer terminal. Marriage certificates, property deeds, and birth records from 1990 onwards are in the digital system, she explained. Anything older than that, you'll need to request paper copies. I searched for Thomas and Lily Wilson, finding their marriage certificate easily enough, but nothing more recent. No property records in either name within the county. On a hunch, I checked neighboring counties and found what I was looking for: a property deed for a house in Greenfield, purchased by Thomas and Lily Wilson in 2001. The address was listed: 427 Oakwood Drive. Armed with this information, I returned to my hotel room to plan my next move. Part of me wanted to drive straight to Greenfield, but uncertainty held me back. What would I say to this woman? "Hi, I'm your niece. Your father, who abandoned you, just died after mentioning your existence to me by accident." My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was the hospice calling. "Ms. Parker? This is Nurse Heather from Oakwood. I wanted to let you know there's been a change in your grandfather's condition." My heart sank. "Is he?" "He's still with us, but he's declining rapidly. The doctor estimates days, possibly a week at most. If there's family who wants to say goodbye, now would be the time." After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, torn between two urgent needs: to see my grandfather before it was too late, and to find the aunt I never knew I had. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity: I needed to find Lily now, before it was too late for her to make peace with her father. I punched the Greenfield address into my GPS and headed north. The drive took just under an hour, through farmland and small clusters of houses that gradually became more suburban as I approached Greenfield. Oakwood Drive turned out to be in a pleasant middle-class neighborhood of ranch-style homes with well-kept yards. Number 427 was a blue house with white trim and a garden full of daylilies and hostas. A silver Honda was parked in the driveway. I parked across the street and sat watching the house, gathering my courage. What if she slammed the door in my face? What if she didn't believe me? Worse, what if she did? After 15 minutes of deliberation, I saw movement at the front window. A woman in her early 50s pulled back the curtain, looking directly at my car with suspicion. I'd been noticed. It was now or never. Heart pounding, I walked up the neat concrete path to the front door and rang the bell. After a moment, the door opened partially, secured by a chain lock. The woman who peered out had my mother's eyes, or rather, my grandfather's eyes. The family resemblance was unmistakable, though her hair was darker, her face slightly rounder than my mother's. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "Are you Lily Wilson? Lily Carter?" Her eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" I took a deep breath. "My name is Autumn Parker. I think Raymond Parker is my grandfather." "And your father?" All color drained from her face. For a moment, I thought she might faint. Then her expression hardened. "What do you want?" "Just to talk. I only found out about you yesterday. I never knew you existed." She laughed bitterly. Join the club. Most people didn't. She studied my face intently. You look like him. Around the eyes. People always say that. A long moment passed before she sighed and closed the door. I heard the chain slide, and then the door reopened fully. You'd better come in, she said, her voice carefully neutral. But I don't have much to say about Raymond Parker. I followed her into a living room decorated in shades of blue and beige. Family photos covered one wall, Lily with a tall man I assumed was her husband, a young woman in graduation cap and gown who looked to be in her 20s. That's my daughter, Jessica, Lily said, following my gaze. She's 25. Lives in Chicago now. My cousin. Another relative I never knew I had. She's beautiful, I said sincerely. She takes after her father's side, thankfully. Lily gestured to the sofa. Sit. I'm guessing you have questions. I sat, noticing how stiffly she held herself, perched on the edge of an armchair as if ready to flee at any moment. I'm sorry to intrude like this, I began. It's just, my grandfather is in hospice. He doesn't have much time left, and he mentioned the apartment on Maple Street. That's how I started looking into all this. So the great Raymond Parker is dying. Her tone was flat, emotionless. And you, what? Thought I'd want to know? That I'd rush to his bedside for some tearful reconciliation? I didn't know what to think. I'm still trying to process all this myself. Lily's hard expression softened slightly. I suppose you are. How much do you know? Just the basics. That you were born in 1974. That your mother was Diana Carter. That my grandfather lived a double life for years. She nodded slowly. Diana Carter was my mother. She was a nurse at Riverdale Memorial. Met your grandfather when he came in with a workplace injury. Their relationship lasted nearly 10 years. Did you know? About his other family, I mean. My mother never hid it from me. She was always brutally honest, said she'd rather I knew the truth than build up some fantasy about why my father wasn't always around. Lily twisted the gold band on her finger. He'd visit 3 or 4 nights a week. Weekends sometimes, if he could make up an excuse. He took me fishing, helped me with homework. Played the role of devoted father when it suited him. I'm so sorry, I said, inadequately. It wasn't all bad, she admitted. He did love me, in his way. And my mother was incredible, strong, independent. She never played the victim. But when I was 18, she finally confronted him, demanded he make a choice. Us or them. A bitter smile crossed her face. We both know which family he chose. Did you ever see him again after that? Once, at my mother's funeral. He came to the back of the church, didn't speak to anyone. Just watched from a distance, then disappeared. Classic Raymond. The anger in her voice was tempered with an old pain that made my chest ache in sympathy. He's been asking about the apartment, I said quietly. In his few lucid moments. I think he regrets a lot of things. Regret comes cheap on your deathbed. Lily stood abruptly and walked to the window, arms crossed tightly. I spent years in therapy dealing with abandonment issues. Do you know what it does to a child when their father chooses another family over them? When he erases them so completely? No, I answered honestly. I can't imagine. She turned back to me. Why are you really here, Autumn? What do you want from me? Nothing. I just thought you should know about his condition. And selfishly, I wanted to meet you. You're my family. Family. She tested the word like it was in a foreign language. I've learned family is more than blood. It's the people who stick around. I agree. But I also think. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I think sometimes we get second chances to heal old wounds. Even if it's just for our own peace of mind. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Your mother, Melissa, right? Did she know about me? She found out when she was 16. But she never reached out. I wouldn't have expected her to. It wasn't her responsibility to fix her father's mistakes. Lily sighed deeply. How long does he have? Truthfully. Days, maybe a week. The hospice called this morning. She nodded, conflict evident on her face. I need to think about this. And talk to my husband. Of course. I wrote my cell number on a notepad she provided. Whatever you decide, I'd like to stay in touch. If you're open to that. As I stood to leave, Lily surprised me by asking, was he a good grandfather to you? The question caught me off guard with its raw vulnerability. Yes, I answered truthfully. He was wonderful. She nodded once, blinking rapidly. I'm glad someone got that version of him. In the car, I called my mother again. I found Lily, I said when she answered. I've just come from her house. There was a sharp intake of breath. How is she? Angry. Hurt. But she listened. Mom, I told her about Grandpa's condition. Autumn. She deserves the chance to say goodbye, if she wants it. You all kept her from being part of our family for decades. I won't be part of that anymore. A long pause followed. You're right, my mother finally said, her voice thick with emotion. You're right, and I'm sorry. I was a coward. It was easier to pretend that part of our lives didn't exist. Will you meet her? If she comes to see Grandpa? Another pause. Yes. It's long overdue. As I drove back to Riverdale, I felt something shift inside me. A realignment of my understanding of family, of the complicated ways love and hurt could coexist, of how the past is never really past but continues to shape us in ways we don't always recognize. The next morning, my phone rang just after 7. It was Lily. I'll come, she said without preamble. To the hospice. But I'm bringing my daughter Jessica. She should have the chance to meet him, even if it's at the end. Of course, I agreed quickly. When? Today. We can be there by noon. I'll meet you there. And Lily? Thank you. I'm not doing it for him, she clarified. Or for you. I'm doing it for me. And for my daughter. I understand. I spent the morning in anxious anticipation, calling the hospice to check on my grandfather's condition, unchanged, and my mother to let her know about Lily's visit. My mother's voice was strained but resolute. I'll be there. Your father too. The hospice parking lot was nearly full when I arrived just before noon. I waited by the entrance, watching for Lily. A silver Honda pulled in, and she emerged with a young woman who must be Jessica. They approached cautiously, Jessica's arm linked protectively through her mother's. Lily, Jessica, thank you for coming. I extended my hand, which Jessica shook firmly while Lily merely nodded. Is he conscious? Lily asked. In and out, according to the nurses. He had a good morning. We walked in silence to the elevator, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Outside my grandfather's room, my parents were waiting. My mother's face went pale at the sight of Lily. You look just like her, she whispered. Like Diana. Lily stiffened. You knew my mother? Only from photographs. And what my father told me. My mother extended her hand hesitantly. I'm Melissa. This is my husband, James. Lily shook their hands with obvious reluctance. My daughter, Jessica. Jessica, who looked both curious and uncomfortable, managed a small smile. This is weird. The unexpected honesty broke some of the tension. My father chuckled. Understatement of the year. Nurse Heather approached, her expression professional but kind. He's awake and quite lucid this morning. But please, only 2 or 3 visitors at a time. We don't want to overwhelm him. Lily took a deep breath. I'd like to go in first. With Jessica. My mother nodded. Of course. I'll come with you, I offered. To introduce you. Lily hesitated, then nodded her agreement. The three of us entered the room quietly. My grandfather lay propped up slightly, his skin ashen against the white pillowcase. His eyes were closed, but they fluttered open at the sound of our approach. Autumn, he smiled weakly. My girl. Grandpa, I brought someone to see you. Someone special. I stepped aside, revealing Lily. For a moment, he looked confused. Then recognition dawned in his rheumy eyes. Lily? His voice cracked. Lily Marie? She stepped forward stiffly. Hello, Raymond. Tears filled his eyes and spilled down his hollowed cheeks. I never dreamed I'd see you again. This is Jessica, Lily said, pulling her daughter forward. Your granddaughter. My grandfather's gaze shifted to Jessica, his expression a mixture of wonder and profound sorrow. You're beautiful, he whispered. Just like your grandmother. Jessica shifted uncomfortably but managed a small smile. Nice to meet you. I'll give you some privacy, I said, moving toward the door. No, Lily said quickly. Stay. Please. I settled into a chair in the corner, witnessing a reunion I still couldn't quite believe was happening. I'm sorry, my grandfather said, his voice barely audible. So sorry, Lily. For everything. I didn't come for apologies, she replied, her voice tight. I know. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know, your mother was the love of my life. Lily's composure cracked slightly. Then why did you leave us? Cowardice, he admitted. Fear. I told myself I was protecting everyone. In reality, I was protecting myself. He reached a trembling hand toward her. Not a day has passed that I haven't thought of you. Missed you. After a moment's hesitation, Lily took his hand. I used to dream about this moment. What I'd say to you if I ever saw you again. I had this whole speech prepared. She shook her head. Now I can't remember any of it. You don't need to say anything. Just you being here. His voice broke. It's more than I deserve. Jessica stepped closer to the bed. My mom is the strongest person I know. Whatever mistakes she made sure they didn't define me. Pride flickered across my grandfather's face. She always was strong. Like her mother. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. My mother peeked in. Can we come in? Lily nodded, and my parents entered. An awkward silence fell over the room as my mother and Lily regarded each other, half-sisters who had never spoken until yesterday. Your daughter is lovely, my mother finally said. Thank you, Lily replied. She's in medical school. Following in my mother's footsteps. Diana would be proud, my grandfather murmured. Yes, she would, Lily agreed, her voice softening slightly. She never held grudges. Not like me. You have every right to your anger, my mother said unexpectedly. What our father did, it was wrong. And I was wrong too, for never reaching out. The direct acknowledgement seemed to catch Lily off guard. She blinked rapidly, then gave a small nod of acceptance. My grandfather's eyes moved between his daughters, his expression filled with a mixture of regret and wonder at seeing them together at last. My girls, he whispered. Both my girls. The afternoon passed in a strange, surreal communion. The initial tension gradually eased as Jessica asked questions about family medical history, and my mother pulled out old photographs she'd brought from home. Lily remained guarded but gradually shared stories about her mother, Diana, painting a picture of a proud, independent woman who never spoke ill of Raymond despite everything. As evening approached, my grandfather's energy waned. Nurse Heather suggested we let him rest, promising to call if there was any change overnight. In the hospital parking lot, we exchanged awkward goodbyes. Will you come back tomorrow? I asked Lily. She hesitated. Yes. I think I will. We're staying at the Riverdale Inn, Jessica offered. Maybe we could all have breakfast in the morning? If that's not too weird. My mother looked surprised but pleased. We'd like that. That night, the hospice called. My grandfather had passed peacefully in his sleep. We gathered at the hospice one last time, not as strangers now, but as a family, broken and imperfect, but together at last. The funeral was held 3 days later at Riverside Cemetery, where my grandmother was buried. The day dawned clear and cool, with a gentle breeze stirring the leaves of the old oak trees that dotted the cemetery grounds. I stood between my parents, watching as people filed into the small chapel, family friends, former co-workers, neighbors who had known my grandfather for decades. And there, arriving just before the service began, were Lily and Jessica, accompanied by a tall man I assumed was Thomas, Lily's husband. My mother stiffened momentarily, then walked over to greet them, guiding them to seats in the front row with our family. The service was simple and dignified, much like my grandfather himself. People spoke of his dedication to his work, his skill as a craftsman, his love of fishing and the outdoors. No one mentioned the complexity of his personal life, the secret he had carried for so many years. That truth belonged only to those of us who now sat together, united in grief and newfound knowledge. At the graveside, as the minister spoke final words of comfort, I watched Lily. Her face was composed, but tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Her husband held her hand tightly, anchoring her. When it came time to place flowers on the casket, she stepped forward with my mother, the two daughters moving in tandem to say goodbye to the father who had loved them both, however imperfectly. Afterward, we gathered at my parents' house for a reception. In the kitchen, away from the murmur of conversation in the living room, I found Lily staring at the family photos that lined the refrigerator. "He kept every drawing I ever gave him," I said quietly. "Every school photo, every report card. He was so proud of me." "He had a box for me too," Lily replied, surprising me. "My mother told me once. He kept everything, my birth announcement, first tooth, school awards. She found it when she was cleaning out the apartment after he left. She gave it to me when I turned 21. Did you look through it?" She shook her head. "I couldn't. It hurt too much. It's still in my attic somewhere. Maybe someday?" "Maybe." She turned to face me. "Your mother gave me something earlier. She said he wanted me to have it." From her purse, she withdrew a small wooden box with intricate carving on the lid, one of my grandfather's creations. She opened it to reveal a simple gold locket. "It was my mother's," she explained. "He gave it to her on their 10th anniversary. She wore it until the day she died." The gesture seemed to have moved Lily deeply. "He kept it all these years." "I never knew." "I think he kept every piece of both his lives," I said. "He couldn't bear to let go of either one, even when he had to choose." Jessica joined us, accepting a cup of coffee from my mother, who had followed her into the kitchen. The four of us stood in a circle, connected by blood and secrets and the complicated legacy of Raymond Parker. "I have something for you too," my mother said, handing me a sealed envelope. "Dad asked me to give this to you after everything." Inside was a letter written in my grandfather's shaky hand and a key. "The apartment on Maple Street," I breathed, suddenly understanding. "He still owned it?" "Kept paying the rent all these years," my mother confirmed. "Walter said he never had the heart to evict him, even though he hasn't stayed there in decades. Dad told me he wanted you to see it. To understand." The next day, Lily agreed to accompany me to the apartment. We met outside the familiar brick building with the green trim. Walter nodded to us solemnly as we passed, handing me an old-fashioned key without comment. Apartment 3B was frozen in time, furniture from the 1970s covered in dust cloths, shelves lined with books and records, walls decorated with faded photographs. It was a shrine to a life interrupted, preserved exactly as it had been when my grandfather walked away for the last time. "I remember this place," Lily said softly, running her finger along a bookshelf. "That chair, he used to read to me there every night before bed. We moved through the rooms slowly, piecing together the life that had been lived within these walls. In what must have been Lily's childhood bedroom, the walls were still painted pale yellow, a collection of stuffed animals arranged on a small bed. "He kept everything," Lily whispered, picking up a teddy bear with one ear missing. "Exactly as it was." In the main bedroom, I found a framed photograph on the nightstand, Diana, beautiful with dark curls and a bright smile, holding baby Lily. Beside it lay my grandfather's watch, stopped at 10:47, and a leather-bound journal. "Should we read it?" I asked, looking to Lily for guidance. She hesitated, then nodded. "I think that's why he kept this place. Why he wanted you to find it. He needed someone to understand." The journal contained entries spanning decades, reflections on his divided life, his love for both families, his torment over the impossible choice he had made, his grief over losing Diana and Lily. The final entry was dated just 3 months ago, before his decline accelerated. "Autumn visits me regularly. She has her grandmother's kindness and her mother's determination. Sometimes I see Diana in her smile, though they never met. The threads of our lives weave together in ways we never expect. I hope someday she'll understand that love, even flawed love, even selfish love, is still love. And that a man can be both terrible and good, a failure and worthy of forgiveness. I hope someday my daughters might find each other, and that the truth, however painful, might finally set us all free." Lily and I sat side by side on the dust-covered sofa, the journal open between us, connected by the complicated man who had loved us both. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "This is all still so strange. My mother would like to know you better. If you're open to that." "One step at a time," Lily said, but her voice had softened. "Jessica likes you. She's always wanted a bigger family. I'd like to know her too. And you." As we prepared to leave the apartment, Lily paused at the door. "What will happen to this place?" "I suppose that's up to us now," I said. "What do you think we should do?" "Let it go," she said after a moment. "Keep what matters, the photographs, the memories, but let the rest go. We can't live in the past." At the funeral reception, Nathan had reappeared, sheepish and supportive. "I'm sorry I left," he said. "You were right to pursue this. Your family needed the truth." Now, standing on the sidewalk outside the apartment building with Lily, I felt a sense of completion. Not perfect resolution, life rarely offers that, but a kind of peace. "I'm having dinner with Jessica and Thomas tonight," Lily said. "Would you like to join us? Your parents too, if they want." "I'd like that," I said, surprised and touched by the invitation. "And Nathan? Will he be joining us?" I smiled. "Yes, I think he will." In the months that followed, our families began the delicate process of becoming acquainted. My mother and Lily discovered shared interests in gardening and classic films. Jessica and I texted regularly, developing the easy rapport of cousins who had grown up together. At Christmas, we gathered at my parents' house, an expanded family still navigating new relationships but committed to moving forward together. The apartment on Maple Street was cleared out, its contents divided between us, the space itself finally released back to Walter. "Your grandfather would be pleased," he told me as I handed over the keys. "He always hoped for reconciliation, even if he didn't believe he deserved it. Life is never as simple as we want it to be. People we love can hurt us deeply, and still be worthy of our love. Families can fracture and find new ways to reconnect. The truth, however painful, offers a foundation more solid than comfortable lies." My grandfather was not the man I thought I knew. He was more complicated, more flawed, and in some ways, more human. In his failures and his love, in his regrets and his hopes, he taught me that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past but about creating space for a different future. So I ask you, what family secrets have shaped your life? Have you ever discovered something that changed your understanding of someone you thought you knew completely? Share your stories in the comments below, and if this journey of discovery resonated with you, Please like and subscribe for more real-life stories of family, forgiveness, and finding truth. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most important connections in our lives are the ones we never knew we were missing.